shading your design ideas can really help to bring them to life. Adding colour not only gives an idea of the design concept, but can also communicate your design a lot more effectively. Knowing how to add colour effectively can also help to make your designs stand out and helps to create realism within your drawings. In other words, it helps to show texture to make them appear 3D and realistic. The use of tone is very important when attempting to shade and create a more realistic effect. An image can have only one colour within it, but various levels of tone within that colour. The following clip shows you the difference between an image that has been coloured using single tones and one that shows variation of tone. Rendering is the technique you use to add tone and/or colour. There are different ways and techniques you can try and develop when doing this, and I'm going to show you some of these now. Remember, there isn't a right or wrong technique. These are just examples of how you might add colour. You may find that after some practice you develop your own way of working.
So there's a huge range of techniques you can use to develop your rendering skills. I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you could do it, and you can use different mediums, so it could be coloured pencils or standard drawing pencils, or I'm going to show you today with a pen, an ink pen. The first one I'm going to show you, which is probably one of the most common, is hatching. So if you were to add colour or tone to part of your design or drawing, you might choose to use hatching, which is simply using lines closely spaced together to build up colour or fill in a space, and lines will be going in the same direction like I'm showing you here. So that one is called hatching. And the next one up from that, which is my personal favourite, it tends to be one that I naturally go to when I'm doing shading, is cross hatching. So it starts off exactly the same way, with lines parallel to each other, closely packed together, and then you will go across the lines, hence the name cross hatching. So that's one way you can build up tone. And then the last one I'm going to show you today, which is quite a fun one to play with, is this one, where you're using effectively scribbles to build up colour and tone. There's no right or wrong way with a scribble, obviously you're going to have your own technique, but it's a nice one to play with and just to practice building up tone. So using coloured pencil and the hatching technique, this is the sort of effect you're going to get. And then cross hatching will look like this. And you can see by going in different directions, just sort of filling in these white gaps that you might be left with when you're using soft pencils. And then scribbling. And the beauty with all 3 of these techniques is that it allows you to concentrate on different areas so that you can build up different tones. So you can see that there's, in this scribbling technique, there's a darker tone in the middle because I've gone over and over in that area. I'm not pressing any harder with the pencil, I've just built up layers there. And then it's more medium tones as we work to the edges, and then lighter tones right at the end. So rendering and being able to add tone to your design ideas is a really clever technique to enable you to communicate your design ideas more clearly. So what I mean by this is, if you are able to show tone and texture in your design, it gives a better idea as to what that product will look like once it's been made. So it's a really important skill to develop within your design work. I'm going to show you a little technique for how you might consider adding tone to an object. You will have in your termly resource pack, a little worksheet that you can choose to work through or not, it's up to you, depending on what your level of work is with adding tone. It's just a really good starter sheet if you're new to this, to have a go and practice the skills before applying them to your own design ideas. So I'm going to show you, demonstrate quickly one of those. So I've drawn a simple picture of a cube, a box, and then you'll notice this little symbol up here, and this is something I'm using to remind me where the light source is coming from. And the reason that's important is because if you're trying to make an object look more realistic and 3D, you need to think about what sides or aspects of that product would have light and dark shadows. So if your light is coming down onto this surface, it would be safe to say that of these three surfaces, this one would have the most light projected onto it, so it would be the lightest surface. I would then estimate that this side would closely follow because the light is going to be able to hit this side. And then by that science, this surface here is going to appear to be the darkest. So when you're working with tone, and for the first time, it might be a good idea to have a go at creating a tonal bar. So this is just going to be a really simple 3-tone bar, so light, medium and dark tone. So I would use cross-hatching because that's my preferred natural method. Now, I think a key tip here when you're colouring or rendering is not to necessarily just press harder with a pencil to get a darker tone, because what can often happen there is that you're left with lots of white gaps on the paper. And if I'll show you by doing that, so if I was creating 3 tones just by pressing lighter and harder with a pencil, this is the effect. So I've got a light tone, I've got a medium tone, and I've got a dark tone. And here you can see little white gaps which aren't going to look so impactful and effective on your design ideas. So my suggestion is to build up tone by building up layers of colour. And that's why I like cross-hatching, because you build up layers each time you do that. So I've got my light, medium and darker tone. I know that this is going to be my lightest surface, so that needs to be coloured as the lightest tone. This is going to be my medium tone, so I start off in exactly the same way. But I'm actually going to go over and add another layer to give a medium tone. And then the front is going to be my darkest tone. That's effectively my second layer, and as you can see it's the same tone as the medium one. And now I'll go back and add a third layer. Hopefully it'll become a dark tone. So that is a really basic and quick way of adding 3 gradients of tone. From there I'd be tempted to add a little bit more detail. So to make this cube look more 3D, I'm imagining this space is front of me and therefore this corner is the closest to me. So I'm going to emphasise that a little bit just by going over the corner's edge with the pencil. And then I'll build up the tone again in that corner. And straight away you should hopefully be able to see that it sort of pops out a little bit more. And you can do the same with this corner. And then down here as well. And the other thing you might be thinking about is whether or not this is casting a shadow. Again, if you've got a light source coming down here and this is the dark face, the shadow is going to come out here. So I might add on a shadow. It comes out from there. So hopefully that's just a little tutorial to give you a bit more guidance on how you can use tone in your designs to make them look a bit more 3D and more realistic.